Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today we're going to be talking about books. These are books that I feel like you guys have been asking about for a while. All of these books, the subject matter of these books that I'm going to be talking about today, all center around femininity, beauty, loneliness, desire, and rage. And almost all of them, with the exception of one, are written by female authors. So that's nice. Some of these books encapsulate all of the categories, and some of them are more directed towards two or one. And so I've labeled all of them with the kind of category that they're in, or categories that they're in. The first one is going to be beauty and desire. If you want to know about what it's like to live in California, especially in the 70s and 60s, then man, you have to read Eve Babitz. The book that I have listed here is the first book that I ever read by her. It's Slow Days, Fast Company, but Eve's Hollywood and pretty much anything else that this woman writes is a work of art, is gold. Slow Days, Fast Company, as well as Eve's Hollywood, anything that she writes is pretty much autobiographical, but it's embellished a little bit, for artistic purposes. They're all short stories based on like a weekend in her life or simply just one evening. And Eve Babitz is just the most sarcastic writer. She's very vigilant, very perceptive. She breathes life into the simplest words. She can make wonderful sound just like its definition. And I have like a certain soft spot for Hollywood, for California, Southern California specifically. I lived there for 4 years, and I didn't like it at first when I moved there, but it stole my heart, and it's even better thinking about it nostalgically. And so when I read Eve Babitz, she really just transports me back to Los Angeles, back to California. Her life was a lot more interesting than mine. She was a socialite. She was in with all of the artists, musicians, other socialites, movie stars, everybody, and just all of her work is just a wonderful, fantastical, almost like fairy tale, fable-like recounting of her very interesting life. So if you want to look for beauty when it comes to California, mostly Southern California, but pretty much all places in California, and you want to know just the inner workings of a place like that and how special it is and how unique that state is and all of its inhabitants, you read Eve Babitz. It's very entertaining, very light reading. It's like speaking to a close friend. So I really highly suggest that everybody read this book. Any of her books. The second book I'm going to recommend you guys read is about femininity, rage, and desire. It is Animal by Lisa TADDEO. This book is a monster. You can't put it down. It's really incredible. Lisa TADDEO kind of popped up out of nowhere. She was a journalist, and she was researching the sexual lives of 3 separate women for almost a decade, and she came out with a book called 3 Women. I haven't read that one, but after that book came out, she was an instant sensation. And then she came out with Animal, which is just female rage in a damn book. That's how everybody talks about this book. It is about a woman who has affairs with married men. It's peering into her mind, her mental state. It's kind of opening up wounds from her past, and throughout the book, throughout these affairs, you go back into her childhood and just moments leading up to a particular very tragic event in her life that kind of caused her to be this way. This book is very personal. The main character you get to know a lot about her in a very intimate, very explicit way. Pretty much everything that she sees in her life is colored by sex, by violence. What I love about that, I find female rage to be very interesting because it's not that it's uncommon, because it's not, but it's far more interesting than male rage because it's one that's internal. It kind of builds over time. It's an insidious kind of rage. We romanticize our rage. We pontificate on our rage. We think about it and mull over it forever, and it turns into this book. There are parts of the book that can be a little bit reaching, a little ridiculous, but it just it's fitting for you can tell that the book is trying to make a point, and it definitely does that. How women can be so important yet discarded at the same time, and our power as a woman. It's been on the bestseller list for a long time. It's worth a read for sure. The next category is loneliness and beauty, and that is going to be Ottessa Moshfegh's Homesick for Another World. It's a collection of very wonderful short stories. I read this book over 2 years ago when I was quarantining in a very, very small, cramped cabin in Kauai when I first moved there. And I don't think I could have been in a better place while reading this book. And my favorite from this collection is called Slumming. It's about a woman who gets a cabin for the summer in Midwestern United States. Ottessa Moshfegh, especially in her earlier works, in her earlier books, she really, really harnessed a talent for being able to breathe life into some of the most mundane situations ever, some of the bleakest ones. And we're talking about the lives of people that we easily forget about or easily discard. We're talking like low class, middle class upbringings, people who have very ordinary jobs, people who live less than ordinary lives, people who don't do much seemingly with their life. We look at them as drab and kind of sad and kind of like they have no purpose or something like that. And Ottessa really knows how to create art out of that situation because she humanizes them. She looks into these people's lives and she realizes that they have very unusual habits. Their inner thoughts and their relationships with other people are far more complex than we could ever think, in our arrogance. Underneath all this mundanity, there's this hidden reservoir of like very peculiar sentiment that these people have. These people are interesting. And they're interesting because they've been discarded. They're kind of on the fringes of society. Ottessa kind of proved to me in her books that even in ugliness, there is beauty. And like in that kind of the solitude of being like pushed away from bourgeois society, there's a lot of room for people to become very, very interesting, complex characters because there's no eyes on those people, I guess. She's the kind of person to make like the laminate wood walls and stained moldy carpet of a home something into something ethereal and unusual and something to think about and to muse over. So beauty and ugliness is what you'll find from Ottessa. Very, very gifted writer. The next category is kind of a bit of everything: desire, beauty, femininity, rage. And it is by Tennessee Williams, A Streetcar Named Desire. And I really, really thank one of my subscribers for pushing me to read this play. It's a play, not a book, but I included it in here because it's important. And Tennessee Williams is not a female playwright or anything like that. But this book is, oh my gosh, I'm so happy I finally read it. I knew I wanted to read it for years and years. I have a copy of it in my house, and I knew instinctually that I would like it, and I just didn't. And I finally was able to read it on Audible, and it was released. This version of A Streetcar Named Desire was released at the height of the pandemic, and it was supposed to be a play, in person. And instead, because nobody could be within 6 feet of one another, the play couldn't be acted out in real life, it was turned into an audiobook. And the performances, my God, are just stellar. The soundscape of this play is just like, oh my God, it really, really heightens every detail in this book. It heightens the kind of tragedy of it, the fear, and like this kind of, you kind of get a gross feeling from certain parts of it. But this book is so divinely tragic. It follows 2 sisters and the one sister's husband, as well as some other characters, some external characters in New Orleans. This play was written by Tennessee to highlight how unfair laws, attitudes towards women, their mental health, their experiences were. It was a play that was meant to start or catalyze a kind of shift in thinking. And so this book has a lot to do with reliance on illusion and beauty, especially one of the main characters, Blanche, who kind of just falls into complete insanity after a very tragic event, which I'm sure if a lot of you guys have read this, you know what I'm talking about. She was the most fascinating character to me because that such heavy reliance on illusion kind of became her downfall in the end. That downfall was just tearing the beauty apart, tearing the illusion apart. She's a very sensitive character, and there's kind of just this philosophy on desire and, you know, what you will forsake for desire, what you will ignore, what you will overlook. It's kind of a cautionary tale. But again, the performances, I've read this like 3 times. I've listened to it like 3 times. The performances are out of this world, and it's a very, very good look at the kind of the cons of relying on beauty and illusion to get through hard times in your life, especially when reality overcomes illusion. The next book is mostly in the category of loneliness. It is A Field Guide for Getting Lost by Rebecca Solnit. And if you take anything from this, it's a collection of essays. If you take anything from this collection, the whole collection is wonderful, but if you take anything from it, it's an essay called The Blue of Distance. She kind of contemplates a philosophy of loneliness, of loss, the kind of unreachable feelings that you can't really name, and she kind of romanticizes it by attributing these feelings to the color blue and the kind of distance of blue. A very elegant kind of metaphor she used was actually an old painting technique where you use the color blue to evoke distance in paintings. Everything she writes also has her figurative language is heavily reliant on nature and the beauty of kind of lost or discarded civilizations. The way that Rebecca Solnit kind of talks about loneliness and being lost too is she kind of encourages you to seek out being lost, to seek out solitude, which is something that I preach on this channel all the time. This need to rely on yourself, to know how to find direction in your life on your own without anybody else, without a guide. You know, that's so necessary for character building, for finding who you are, who you truly are. And it's very necessary to be reliant on that as a woman too, to kind of unlock your hidden power through the use of like being lost, through being in solitude, through kind of romanticizing melancholy. She romanticizes and humanizes at the same time. She's very well read, very educated. It's an excellent collection. The next one is in the category of femininity and desire, and it is one of my favorite ladies, ANAÍS Nin. I don't think I could do a video on books I'm reading without including ANAÍS. The book is called The Four-Chambered Heart. It is a novella. It is a partially fictionalized recounting of an affair that she had with a man in Paris, and they lived on a houseboat together, which the houseboat is kind of is an extended metaphor that ANAÍS uses throughout a lot of her different novellas. The houseboat, this time in her life, was a very, very important one. You could tell. Anything relating to water and just like this isolation of being on this boat. ANAÍS's books, her works of fiction, always, if you've read her diaries, you can always see her real life in these novellas. They are just more fictionalized. There's a lot more ruminating in them. This was due to the fact that her diaries couldn't get published for a very long time because they were far too lewd. So she tried to take the real events from her life and make them into small fictionalized stories. And all of her books, all of her short stories are just kind of like a psychoanalysis of herself. The books are like half plot, and then the other half is just musings and thinking, philosophizing and wondering about herself, and just trying to untangle moments from her past, feelings that she had, what I like to call mauve feelings that you can't really understand or name. And what you get from this book, as well as pretty much anything else that she writes, is a very, very in-depth insight into the female mind. A woman who can access the deepest corners of her mind with ease. And what I like particularly about The Four-Chambered Heart is more towards the end, where she talks about men, and she talks about, when talking about the man that she was having the affair with, just talking about like a man's inability to keep relationships together, but they will build monuments, they will be architects, they will start revolutions, and yet they have such a hard time understanding us as women. I thought those little ruminations were really important. Obviously not all men are like this, but it is kind of in a man's nature to evade understanding femininity and understanding the complexity of our feelings, but they will do everything but. And it is eventually just kind of what ruined the relationship between her and this man. His name is Rango in the book. His kind of inability to make any of his ideas come to fruition. Nothing ever pans out. It's all just kind of ideas in his head. And yet during this entire affair, the building and saving of their relationship is just lost on him. He's unable to understand her moods and her desires and her needs, her wants, what she needs from a man in a relationship, what you need from love. A lot of it is just about how this man isn't able to sacrifice himself for love. And yet the woman who is ANAÍS, her name is DJUNA, she will literally, it's so creepy. She will literally sacrifice everything, every bit of herself, her freedoms, her desires to fulfill this man and to help him realize his potential. And it comes to the end where she almost commits suicide with him because she cannot reconcile the part of her that wants to be free and the part of her that wants to love and care for another man. It's a comment on a lot of women's feelings today, this battle within us. The last book to read is in the category of femininity, beauty, and desire, and it is Nightwood by Una Barnes. It is a work of fiction. This is last on the list because I have not read it all the way through, but it deserves to be on this list because it is an excellent caricature, the main character, a caricature of a woman that is devout to chaos, to Mother Nature. T.S. Eliot completely just raved about this book. I found this book on happenstance when I was kind of scourging my public library for books on decadent Europe. And I kind of found myself in the catacombs of the library where the fiction is. And this book was just propped up on display. It was almost as if I was meant to find it. And the book is set in decadent Europe, in Vienna, in Paris, and in Berlin. If there is any book out there, aside from anything by like Oscar Wilde or Baudelaire, if there's any book out there that is going to give you a proper insight onto what people were thinking at the time of decadence, which was like the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s, it's this book. It's Nightwood. This book is just filled with philosophical conversation, or as Holbrook Jackson would have called it, talking intensely about nothing at all. There's actually a part of the book where two people talk at length about the night, and it's absolutely fascinating. I'm sure that's where the title of this book kind of emerged from. Una Barnes is an exceptionally talented writer. She's very stylistic, very floral, but exceptionally sharp in her details. Very, very intelligent woman. There's a lot of fixation on beauty in this book, objects, aestheticism. But the reason why, again, I included this book is because it gives a very clear image of the chaotic woman, of the woman that lives closest to nature. The woman in the book that I'm talking about, her name is Robin. Her association with nature is so conspicuous that she's born from the womb of the earth when she's introduced. It's so insane. I'll just read the introduction of her. The perfume that her body exhaled was of the quality of that earth flesh, fungi, which smells of captured dampness and yet is so dry, overcast with the odor of oil of amber, which is an inner malady of the sea, making her seem as if she invaded a sleep incautious and entire. Her flesh was the texture of plant life, and beneath it one sensed a frame, broad, porous, and sleep-worn, as if sleep were decay fishing beneath the visible surface. About her head there was an effulgence of a phosphorus glowing about the circumference of a body of water, as if her life lay through her in ungainly luminous deteriorations, the troubling structure of the born somnambule who lives in two worlds, meat of child and desperado. Robin is a representation of femininity's association with the unknown and the chaotic. The whole book details her kind of wayward nature, this desire to be free, and this kind of carelessness with her desire and what happens as a result of that. fascinating. I can't wait to finish it. All right, that's the end of this video. I gotta get to work. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys read some of the books that I suggested here. If you do read them, please let me know what you thought of them. I would love to see your comments below. Please do not forget to like and subscribe as always, and I will see you guys next week.